apologies for the really weird lighting. The slight problem with being a YouTuber in the UK is that at this time of year you get about 7 hours of daylight, and my schedule often means that I just have no time to film with natural light. So here we are. So a couple of people have asked me how I got to be doing a PhD, and the British education system is different to a lot of other countries, and rather than try and explain everything in a comment that will probably just end up being really confusing, I thought I would just make a video and explain. So we're going to go all the way back to 2007 when I was taking my GCSEs. So that's the qualification you do at the end of compulsory education in the UK, and that is at the age of 16. I took 11 GCSEs and I passed all of them, and you needed to pass at least 5 to be able to go and study at sixth form, which is the next stage of my school anyway. Some of them vary, but the general thing in the UK is that to do the next stage you need to have at least passed 5, and that usually has to include English and maths. So the next stage at sixth form is called your A-levels. When I did it anyway, it was first year is your AS levels and the second year is your A-levels. And an AS just counts for half of an A-level. And also when I did it, it was the year before they introduced the A-star grade, so an A grade was the best you could get at the time. So for my A-levels, I took biology, geography, maths and physics, and then I dropped biology after the first year, so just did that for AS. So then I just had maths, physics and geography. I was umming and ahhing between taking geography and physics at university, and I wasn't sure which to do. And I decided on physics because I thought that that would be the more broad subject and wouldn't narrow my choices down, since I didn't really know what I wanted to do after university. I just wanted to stick with the subject that I enjoyed. So I applied for physics to 5 universities in the UK. Ooh, what were they? It was Swansea, where I ended up going, Imperial College London, Manchester, Bath and Warwick. Yes, that's where I applied. I ended up not even going to my interview at Manchester because I actually hadn't meant to apply for Manchester. I meant to apply for Sheffield. I don't quite know how I managed that. So Imperial College was the one I wanted to go to. That's a really prestigious university. It's one of the best in the UK, it's one of the best in the world, and it's in London, and I was really excited. I really wanted to go study in a big city. So I really wanted that. Unfortunately, I didn't have the predicted grades to get to go for physics at Imperial College. You needed to be predicted 3 A's, and I wasn't. But they did offer me a position on the course for geophysics because I had geography as well as physics. So I ended up thinking that looked really interesting and went for that as my first choice anyway, because I just really wanted to study there. Didn't get the 3 A's that I then needed still to study that course. I got an A and 2 B's. But I got to go to Swansea and study physics there, which, knowing myself as well as I do now, was definitely a better decision for me than to study in London. I think that the stress and pressure of being at one of the top world universities and in a really expensive city to live in, I just don't think I would have had anywhere near as good a experience as I did being in a smaller, less prestigious university in a small town. I was originally on the Enthis course, which is a 4-year course which results in an undergraduate master's degree, basically. A lot of people do it because the British undergraduate is a 3-year course, and in most countries it's 4. So a lot of people will do it so that it's considered to be the same everywhere worldwide as an undergraduate degree, just because it can confuse people, and yeah, so a lot of people do it for that reason. I was originally on that, and I tried to drop down to just the 3-year BSc rather than Enthis, and they told me after 1 year, oh, it's fine, it's the same still for another year, you might as well leave it. And then my grades weren't good enough to stay on the Enthis, and they made me drop down. So that was annoying, because I wanted to do it out of my own free will. But I ended up getting a first in my degree, which is the best that you can do. So, ha 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 ha. So after I finished my undergraduate, I had no idea what I was doing. All my friends had applied to jobs or to do master's degrees, mostly staying in Swansea, and I just had no idea what I was doing. So I temporarily went home back to Cardiff to stay with my parents and applied for jobs. Lots of jobs, and I was determined at that point. I was done with education. You can see how well that theory turned out. I got an email from the university because they had places available on some of their master's courses, and if you were a graduate from the university, that meant they had access to your results and everything. When you could just email them saying, I'd like to do this course, and assuming you qualified, they would just put you forward for it. And there was a course that looked really interesting that also had funding attached to it, and that is a really rare thing for a master's degree. But there was a a scheme called Access to Masters that was partly with the UK, no, it was with the Welsh Government and the European Social Fund, that was it. And it was just for a few years for specific sciencey courses, and the course I was interested in had this funding, so I was like, okay, that's something to do for a year, even if I don't know what I'm doing afterwards. So I applied for that, and I got it. I got the funding. So that was another year of my life studying geographical information and climate change, which was really interesting. There was a lot of computer modelling, climate modelling, a lot of computer-based stuff, as well as learning about a lot of the historical climate change and how we can then relate that to current climate change. It was really interesting. A part of how that funding worked was that we had to do our dissertation in partnership with an external company. It was supposed to be a local company, a small to medium enterprise. They were allowed to have a certain number of larger companies as well, just because of the number of students who were doing it. So one of the options for my course was to do something with the Ordnance Survey, which is the UK's big mapping agency that pretty much anyone who's British will have heard of, will have had to have used one of their paper maps at some point. You just had to come up with an idea for something, and if they liked the idea that you come up with for your project, then they might take you on for it. But it was a very just, if you come up with something good, we might consider you. I thought, might as well, not losing anything, wasn't expecting for them to say yes. And I proposed something to do with, I can't remember the exact wording that I used, but it was a mapping app, because at the time the Ordnance Survey didn't have any apps at all that I could find on App Store, on Google Play Store, no apps. So I just thought I'd write a vague thing to do with how maps on smartphones were the future and researching how people use them. Yeah, and then they said that they would do that. I didn't know anything about making apps, how to code, really, other than a few basic things that I had done previously. I'd used Visual Basic for one module during my physics course, and the modelling that we'd done involved using really obscure programming languages that no one uses. So yeah, I then had, so it was about June that this got approved, and we had to submit it in September. So during that time I taught myself to code in Java for Android, and I made an app, ran a study using it, and then analysed the data and wrote it up. It was so stressful, but I did it, I passed, everything is good. When I was doing this master's project, my contact at the Ordnance Survey said if I was interested in this sort of thing, they actually had a PhD going that was going to be on this kind of topic, and if I was interested, I should apply for it. And I thought, nah, I'm good, I'm done with education, I'm really done this time, definitely this time. And then after a few weeks of that thought just sitting there, I was just thinking, maybe I should just have a go. You know, fill out the application, submit it, see what happens. You know, if you get an interview, bit of interview practice, haven't done many interviews, might as well. You're never going to get it, because it's a PhD, and there's no way you're good enough to do a PhD. So, yeah. So I applied, they said, great, come along to an interview. I came up to Nottingham for an interview one day, and they called me back later that day saying, yeah, you got it. I wasn't prepared for that answer. I really wasn't. So I think they were expecting me to sound very excited and like, yeah, great. Whereas it was a moment of silence, and then I'll have to talk to my family and get back to you on that. Can I have a few days to think about it? Which they were fine with. But yeah, in the end I decided that I'd regret it if I didn't do it. So I went and did it. So that was towards the end of 2013. That was when I started this PhD. So I'm coming to the end of my 3 years. My 3 years are up in January, because I delayed my studies for a few months a little while back. So I finish in the end of January, February. I need to check the date. Really should. And the way that a PhD here works, you have, in general, 4 years in total to complete. So it's 3 years of being actual research student, and then 1 year of writing up. So the way that normally works, you then, yes, you have your 3 years of working, you have 6 months before you should be submitted, and then in that final 6 months you have to do your viva, which is like an oral examination with your supervisor, an internal, someone from the university examiner, and an external examiner from another university who's also like a specialist in that area. So you do that, and then when you pass that, there will probably be a few corrections that you need to do and you alter a few things in your thesis, submit that, and you are done. And that is passed and finished. So I have about a year left until I'm really hoping that that will be done. I've got a little over a year until it has to be done, but I am hoping this time next year it will be finished and I'll just be waiting for graduation. So we can only hope. I'm sure I've missed out some details or assumed that you know something about British university systems. This probably isn't. If you're looking for a comprehensive guide on how the education system works in the UK, that is not this video. But hopefully it clarifies for anyone who's been confused about how I got here. Hopefully that made a bit more sense.